Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today's story is about a commercial landlord who believed intimidation, threats, and endless demands would force a tenant into financial ruin. Instead, those same tactics triggered a carefully planned response that turned the landlord's own greed into his worst liability. One that left an entire building empty and a 100-ton problem sitting exactly where it started. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. My a-hole landlord loved to threaten everyone. When he targeted a restaurant, I gave him a 100-ton reminder of his own arrogance. Landlords of commercial buildings are some of the cruelest, nastiest people I've ever come across. This revenge tale is about a commercial landlord and how I dealt with him. Back in the 90s, sometimes I'd go for lunch at this restaurant in the basement of our building. The place was called The Vault because it had a massive bank vault that had always been there, dating back to the days before the place was turned into a restaurant. The vault was so huge that they could seat a couple of tables in there, and you could eat dinner surrounded by rows of old, gleaming safe deposit boxes. One day, I was there for lunch, and the owner took me aside. "The landlord's driving me nuts," he said. "The landlord drives everyone nuts," I said. I was a subtenant in the same building, sharing space with an older lawyer, Aaron, and the landlord was always causing us trouble. I'd already had a few run-ins with him, and we hated each other on sight. In most jurisdictions, commercial landlords don't need court orders to get you out if you're late with the rent. Instead, they just change the locks, and you find out about it when you show up and your key doesn't work. Every time our landlord had a dispute with anyone, which was often, he'd always threaten to change the locks. "He keeps demanding all this stuff for extra rent," the vault's owner said, "and it's really weird because a lot of it's really old." The restaurant owner showed me a letter the landlord had served on him earlier that day. I looked over the demand and read a list of expenses for snow removal and parking lot repair and common area flooring and all kinds of crap going back years. I read it all the way to the end, and there it was, the usual clause saying he was going to change the locks if the tenant didn't pay this and do that. "You do something to make the landlord hate you?" I asked, because this is a bit over the top, even for our a-hole landlord. "He knows I'm moving the restaurant. I think he's trying to grab as much money as possible before I go. Plus, he's giving me grief over the vault." "He won't let you take it with you?" "Are you kidding? It weighs almost 100 tons and I don't need it. But the lease says I have to remove it and that I also have to restore the building to what it was before there was a vault. That'd cost a fortune. The a-hole landlord says if I leave the vault behind when I move, he'll sue." "Send your lease up to my office and let me look it over," I said. I finished my lunch, and when I got back to my office, the lease was waiting for me. It was just as bad as the restaurant owner said. The lease was a renewal of an assignment of a renewal. The original documents dating back to shortly after World War II when a bank first leased the place and the vault was installed. Somehow the landlord had suckered the restaurant into taking over a lease that left him liable to remove a bank vault at the end of the term. No big deal, I thought. The restaurant can default, and all the landlord can do is sue a shell company. But when I got to the last page of the lease, there was a guarantee clause. The restaurant owner had personally guaranteed the lease, and he was on the hook for removing a vault weighing 100 tons and then fixing the place up. It had cost a fortune. The case was hopeless. Of course, that was obvious right away. But then I thought about the a-hole landlord with his demands and his threats and his rent hikes, and I asked my brain to do me a solid, which it promptly did. I picked up the phone and called the restaurant owner. "I'm effed, right?" he said. "You're calling me to say there's no way out. That's what my commercial lawyer already said, but I just thought I'd ask. I can save you, but it's going to cost." "How much?" $5,000 in legals and another G note for the agent." "Agent? What kind of agent?" "Real estate. Send up a check, certified, and leave the rest to me." The check hit my desk in less than an hour. I went to Aaron's office. "I need a real estate agent," I said. "You buying a house?" "Nope." "Selling a house?" "Nope." By this point, I'd been sharing space with Aaron for almost 5 years, and he knew me pretty well. "You pulling one of your stunts again?" he asked. "Yup, but nothing that'll get you into trouble." Aaron reached out for his old-school Rolodex and started flipping through it. "I know a guy," he said. Aaron knew all kinds of guys, and that's one of the reasons he eventually got disbarred. But he knew a guy, and he gave me the agent's name and number, and the next day I paid the agent a visit. I told him what I needed, and we agreed to terms. I gave him some papers and the cash for his fee. A few days later, I was again at the vault for lunch. The owner saw me walk in and greeted me himself. "The landlord's here," he said. "Why?" "For lunch and to be an a-hole." "Let's sit in the vault room so I don't have to look at his face." He took me to the vault room, and with the door almost completely closed, we had a consultation while we ate pasta and drank red wine. "We're making demand on the landlord," I said, between bites of a perfect carbonara. "Demand? What are we demanding?" I pulled a document out of my briefcase and passed it to him while I sipped my wine. "We're demanding that the a-hole landlord release all the restaurant equipment, all the fixtures, the ovens, the freezers, the ventilation, everything you need to run a restaurant. The lease exempts all that stuff," the restaurant guy told me. "He can't stop me taking what I want. The only thing that matters is the vault, and of course I don't want that." I shook my head. "You need the vault," I said, "and we're demanding that he release the bank vault as well. We're insisting that he let you take it out within 7 business days." "You think I can beat the landlord with reverse psychology? You think if you treat him like a 2-year-old, you can manipulate him into doing what you want?" "We'll find out soon enough. He's had the demand for a couple of days now." The restaurant owner dropped his wine glass and it shattered on the marble floor. "You already gave it to him?" the restaurant owner said. He got up, swung open the vault door, and called for the waiter to clean up the mess. "Let's see what the landlord has to say," I told him, and we walked over to the landlord's table. The landlord was a big, beefy man with a big appetite. He sat alone, eating a rack of lamb wolfishly with his hands. "My client needs an answer today," I said. The landlord looked up at me as he chewed noisily. "I'm the vault's lawyer," I said. "I gave you a demand letter the other day. My client needs an answer right now. He needs the vault for a new place, and he's got to make arrangements." "Your client can forget about the bank vault," he said, wiping his massive, greasy hands on an already soiled napkin. "But you can't do that," I said. My shock was feigned, but the restaurant owner's jaw dropped for real. The landlord laughed at us. "I'm the landlord. I can do what I want." "I'm going to need that in writing because my client might sue," I said. "Sue all you like," the landlord told me. "Sue till you're blue in the face." He told me that I'd have a formal response by day's end, and then he told me to go away and let him finish his lunch. When the letter arrived from the landlord claiming ownership over the bank vault, I brought it downstairs and showed it to my client. "How the hell did you do that?" "Trade secret," I said. The following month, the restaurant moved out, and the place was empty. And that was too bad, because I always liked eating at the vault. Now the restaurant was in a new location, 20 minutes away. They called the new place the vault, and they'd preserved the vibe of the old place. It was very similar, except they didn't have the bank vault. The bank vault, all 100 tons of it, was where it had always been, in the basement of the building where I rented space. I showed up for work a little after that, and Aaron collared me. "The landlord's looking for you," he said. "Oh yeah, what about?" "He's really angry. He said his deal fell through." "Deal?" "He was supposed to rent the place downstairs to a new tenant, a bank or credit union or something like that. They were supposed to sign a lease, but they didn't show up." "And what's that got to do with me?" I said to Aaron. And I said the same thing again to the landlord when he managed to track me down a couple of days later. "I know you were behind this," he said, his jowls quivering. "I knew it was you. That offer from the agent, it was all bullcrap. Just a trick to make me keep the vault so that your client could sneak out of the place and leave the effing bank vault behind. I'm going to sue. If you're looking for counsel, I think I'm going to have to declare a conflict. I'm going to sue the restaurant and that agent, and I'm going to sue you," he stormed off. But the landlord didn't sue. Of course he didn't. He didn't have a contract to sue on, only a vague letter of intent that I drafted, enough to hook a greedy landlord who was used to having his way. The offer he'd received was non-binding, incapable of acceptance without the signing of a formal lease, which of course never got signed. When I left Aaron's place a year later, the downstairs was still unoccupied, with a sad "for rent" sign sitting in the window, starting to look faded. In commercial disputes, sometimes the most powerful move is making your opponent think they're being clever while they're actually walking into your trap. You didn't fight the lease terms, you used them. You didn't argue about the vault, you made the landlord want it. The landlord's vacant space with its fading "for rent" sign wasn't just empty real estate, it was a monument to the consequences of greed without foresight, and that 100-ton vault wasn't just steel and concrete, It was the physical embodiment of a lesson he paid for but never learned. And our next story. Family businesses. I'm writing this from a throwaway account because the world is small and corporate family businesses are like mosquitoes. If one bites you today, tomorrow his brother, his cousin, and the HR accountant will show up too. I worked at a mid-sized IT company in a major U.S. city. Not a global giant, but not a garage either. We had big clients, SLAs, nighttime releases, and that special 7:30 a.m. office smell, coffee, plastic, and mild panic. I was the guy they called when everything's on fire. My job title sounded impressive, but in practice, if a server coughs, I'm the doctor. If the database cries, I'm the therapist. If a manager screams, I'm also the therapist, just without a license. Then one Monday, the owner, let's call him Martin, calls me into a conference room. He's sitting there with another guy, younger, in an expensive hoodie, wearing the kind of smile that looks like he already transferred your house into his name. "This is Clay," Martin says, "my younger brother. He'll be director of innovation." Clay reaches out and shakes my hand like he's trying to prove to his dad that he's a strong man. "Heard about you," he says. "You're the guy who keeps everything together with duct tape, right?" "Thanks," I say. Duct tape is a certified engineering material. He laughs like I just told the joke specifically for him. I was just stating a fact. For the first 2 weeks, Clay innovated mostly by attending meetings and repeating my ideas in his own words. I'd say we need to automate deploys so we don't crash during peak hours. He'd say, "I have a vision, automation of the future." And everyone would go, "Wow." On week 3, I get called in again. "We need knowledge continuity," Martin says, staring like he's reading a press release. "You know, bus factor and all that." "Bus? Are you planning for me to get hit by a bus?" Clay grins. "No, just the business needs to be resilient. You'll teach me, well, everything. Your magic." Martin adds more sternly, "This is an official assignment, prepare documentation, run book, SOP, call it whatever you want, and training session so Clay can pick up the processes." I nodded, smiled, walked out, and did what any sane person does after hearing, "You'll teach me everything." I went for coffee so strong it could sign contracts on my behalf. That evening, I accidentally overheard a conversation. Accidentally as in, you're walking to the printer, the office door's open, and fate turns the volume knob up. "He's expensive," Martin was saying, "but he's useful." "He's too useful," Clay laughed. "That's the point. Let him write me the instructions and then, well, you know, we optimize." "Just no drama," Martin muttered. "Keep it by the process." I stood there holding a ream of paper and thought, okay, by the process it is. Starting the next morning, I became the best version of myself, just not the version that saves everyone at 3 a.m., the version that documents. I wrote the SOP like the prosecutor would read it. Every step was like bomb disposal instructions, except instead of RedWire, it was click deploy. Before you begin, confirm you have X-level access. If you do not, stop. Do not perform Step 7 without Change Advisory Board CAB approval. In case of error, open a ticket, not DM someone in Slack, an actual ticket. And most importantly, I added a lot of places where it honestly said, if you do not understand what this means, do not proceed, because I'd already seen people wreck production with full confidence without even understanding what production is. At the same time, I started job hunting, quietly, politely, like someone packing a suitcase during a house fire, trying not to wake the neighbor. Training sessions with Clay look like a comedy show where I'm the host and he's the guest who thinks the applause is for him. "Okay, Clay," I say, "here's the monitoring dashboard. See that chart?" "Yeah," he nods confidently. "That's performance." "That's CPU temperature." "Right, yeah, heat performance," he says without blinking. I tried to stay professional, but sometimes the sarcasm leaked out on its own. "And what's this?" I ask, pointing at rollback. "That's the weak button," he says. "We innovate." Then remember, I tell him, the weak button sometimes saves companies from bankruptcy. By week 4, he was walking around the office telling people he built the deployment system. The deployment system was mine. I just stopped correcting him. Fine. Around then, a competitor reached out. Decent company, good money, less family drama. After the interview, they told me, "We like that you say process and you don't yell." I almost cried from happiness. Then came the critical day. Big client, big release, everyone nervous. Clay struts around like a general before battle, except instead of a map, he's holding an iPhone. Today I'm taking control, he announces in the war room. No panic, I've got everything under control. I silently opened my SOP and set it beside me like a Bible. The project manager, Sarah, leaned in and whispered, "You'll be the safety net, right?" "I'll be by the process," I said so calmly she went even paler. Clay hits deploy and as far as I can tell doesn't even check whether there's an approved change request. 3 minutes later, monitoring turns into the EKG of a person who just looked at their taxes. "Why is everything red?" someone shouts. Clay quickly clicks something else. "It's just a transition state," he says. "I read about this in a thread." Sarah, "Clay, the client's already on the call. Their site is down." Clay looks at me. "Fix it." I look at him. "Where's the emergency change? Where's cab? Where's your ticket?" "Are you serious?" he practically bounces. "This isn't the time for bureaucracy." I open the SOP and read calmly, like an airport announcer. In case of a production incident, 1. Open a P1 ticket. 2. Assign an incident commander. 3. Record who's making decisions. 4. Perform rollback only after confirmation from the change owner. Sarah, fast. "I'm opening a PI, Clay. You're incident commander." Clay, "Me?" "Of course." Me, "Great. Then confirm in chat, I, Clay, authorize rollback." He stares at me like I asked him to eat the printer. "Just do it." "By the process," I say, "we need the record." The war room goes quiet. Quiet so thick you could spread it on toast. Grinding his teeth, Clay types in chat, "I authorize rollback." Clay, "Thank you," I say. "Now step 1, verify the latest backup." Sarah, "We have a backup?" Clay waves his hand. "Of course, basic stuff." I open the backup system, last successful backup, the day before yesterday. I raise an eyebrow. "Clay, you deployed without a current backup?" "It was minor changes," he snaps. "I sped up the process." "You sped up the process like someone throwing away a parachute because it slows you down," I say. That was the kind of dark humor that keeps your nervous system alive when it's already too late to save production. On the client call, their CTO asks coldly, "Who authorized the release?" Sarah checks the changelog, and it's beautifully engraved like a tombstone, "Approved by Clay, implemented by Clay." "It was Clay," she says in the voice of someone realizing she lives in a sitcom. Clay opens his mouth, closes it, opens it again. "It was teamwork," he manages. I couldn't resist. Yes, a team consisting of Clay and his confidence. After the rollback, we brought the service up partially because the data had been in the process of innovation. The client was furious. Martin ran into the war room looking pale as an Excel sheet without formulas. "What happened?" he barked. Sarah showed him the signature logs. Martin looked at Clay the way you look at someone who stole your boat and then sank it in a puddle. After that, Martin tried what every leader tries when their decision hits the wallet: find someone to blame who isn't a relative. He pulled me aside. "You could have stopped this," he says. I nodded. "I could have, but you said everything by the process." I trained Clay. The documentation exists. His signature, his commands, his decisions. "Do you understand how this looks?" "Yes," I said, "exactly how it should look, transparent." The next morning, I brought in my resignation letter. HR smiled like she'd won the lottery. Forgetting the prize was responsibility. Clay walked past and muttered, "You did this on purpose." I looked at him and said, "No, I did exactly what you wanted. I taught you. Now you can do everything without me, even the crashing." At the new company, they gave me access, showed me a sane process, and said, "If something's on fire, we don't hunt for a culprit, we put it out." I almost started trusting people in the first week, which felt suspicious. And I found out about the old company by accident a couple of months later. That big client left. Martin reorganized the department. Clay got moved to special projects, which in corporate English means stay away from the buttons. If someone decides to replace you with a genius, sometimes the best revenge is not shouting or causing a scandal. It's the perfect instruction that allows a person to fail completely on their own. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.